Well, hello, everybody. It is Eddie Speed. I am founder of Note School. I started in the discount note buying space in 1980, a long time ago. So over the years, I've worked with a lot of real estate investors or real estate oriented investors. And particularly, I've had a long experience with people that had prior dealings in rental properties. So the industry term in rental properties is ROI, return on investment, right? Some of you from the commercial real estate world would call that the cap rate or the capitalization rate. Now, from the note perspective, when you buy a note and you're going to collect essentially interest on your investment over time, that we would call that the yield. And so it's not the same formula. It's a different formula. And so the purpose in this training is to show you the difference from one versus the other and why it works, why it matters. So let's go through it. I think this will be good. I think this is a lot. I've been asked this literally thousands of times over the years. And so our team has become very aware of the fact that this is kind of a block and an educational opportunity for us to understand the difference in the two. So we will certainly go through here and just try to draw as clear of an analogy as we can. So once again, it's yield versus ROI. So the guy that's looking at yield, he says, I'm looking into the future, meaning way out into the future. And the guy that is looking at ROI is saying, I'm looking at historical data on a 1-year period. Both are measurements of return, right? So which tool do you use, right? Well, this is a pretty simple analogy, but it's a pretty good one. The screwdriver, right? And so obviously we have a Phillips head screwdriver and a flat head or a regular head screwdriver. So this screw, well, it's going to be suited for the Phillips head, and for this screw, it's going to be suited for the flathead. So you wouldn't use the same screwdriver for both of them, or if you did, you probably have somebody mad at you and messing up the threads on the top of the screw and where you'd insert the proper head. And so we've all kind of lived this in some degree. And so this is kind of just an easy little analogy for people to do. So defining ROI, it's a financial measurement of profitability. ROI is an acronym meaning return on investment. It's used to value income producing properties. So whether you're looking at an apartment complex, an office building, a single family rental, it doesn't really matter. Any income producing property, this becomes kind of the standard. Now, a lot of people that would come from the commercial real estate world, we would all call this a capitalization rate. Or the cap rate. So basically, we'll go through the formula and how it works. These are just industry terms so you can relate to it. Now, this would be hypothetically the cash flow on a property for a 1-year period. And you would take that number, and from that 12-month period of its income, its net income, then that would be a formula to go determine what it's worth. And this is how, when people are referring to ROI or return on investment, this is exactly what they're talking about. So defining yield, remember, I come from the note world where people are buying longer term investments or calculating longer term investments. It's the effective interest earned on investment over a period of years. It's generally referred to as yield to maturity, right? It's also known as interest on investment. So that relates because if I earn interest on a CD or I earn interest on a bond, that's the interest on my investment. Is it a yield? Yes, it's really the same thing, right? So financial calculations are exactly the same on installment notes. So if I buy a loan, I literally am going to use a financial calculator, exactly the same financial calculator, whether it's Excel or the old school HP 12C that I've been using literally since the early 1980s. It's going to be the same. It's going to be the exact same calculation. It's going to be exactly the same keystrokes where I determine interest paid on a loan. So, and we'll go through that. So this $1,000 could be payable over 20 years. It's the same monthly payment. It's a different way of calculating. Okay. So yield versus ROI. So once again, yield refers to ongoing earnings of investment over time. And I say many years. And of course, ROI is the ratio of overall gain from an investment relative to its cost. A ratio of overall gain from an investment relative to cost over a 1-year period. So both are measurements of return. Both are measurements, and so it's using, once again, the right tool, the right screwdriver for the right screw that you're trying to screw into the wall, so to speak, right? So let's do this. I took an asset, and this was actually an asset that we had worked on many years ago, or a student of ours had worked on. It was a case study, but I can work 2 examples of the same asset. One of them is the ROI as if it were a rental property, and that was a rental property at one time. Or I can work the yield as if it were a seller finance note transaction. So we'll do both of those. So let's use first the rental method to the ROI and how you value a rental. Okay. So this property was in Dayton, Ohio. Current market value, and I brought this up to more a current market condition, is $128,500. This was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. I know in many markets it could be worth a lot more than that, but let's just be fair about what this is. And so the rental income on this is $1,250 per month, gross rent. Okay, so then let's calculate the net operating income. First thing you have to do with a rental property is back in to get to a net income number, not a gross number. Okay, so the rent was $1,250, taxes and insurance $250 a month, vacancy and maintenance $125 a month, essentially 10%. Management fee of $125 per month. So the total expense is $500. And so if I'm going and looking at those total expenses, then the net operating income, right, after expenses are paid, and this is the income after expenses. So what do I do with that? Now I'm down to a net income per month of $750 over a 1-year period. And so a 1-year period, then I'm going to take that and annualize it. Okay, so once again, the monthly converted to the annual gets me an annual income. So yes, this cash flow over 12 months is $9,000 per year. Now from that number, I can back into what it would be worth on the income approach. This is the capitalization rate, the ROI, return on investment. So the net annual income is $9,000. I picked a number of 7%. That's a pretty high cap rate, or a pretty high ROI rate in today's market. So once again, that would be the ROI, or the capitalization rate, could be very, very different depending on what market you're in. So Dayton, Ohio could look extremely different than Phoenix, Arizona, or California, or Denver, or certain other markets. So this is just simple math. I take $9,000. I can just put this in a calculator. I take $9,000 and divide it by 7%. When I do that math, that's going to tell me that property's, based on its income approach at a 7% ROI, is worth $128,571. Okay, now once again, return on investment is the same as the cap rate. All right, so now let's take the same property. Well, let me finish this. So based on all these numbers, what is this income property worth at $1,250 a month net operating income? It's worth $128,571 with a return on investment of 7%. So at this ROI of 7%, you just simply back into it, and that's how I come up with that's what the property's worth. And it does, and as I said, it doesn't matter whether, if you're looking at an income producing property that's more commercial than residential. This is pretty much the standard of how it operates in the market. And with those numbers right there, you're going to have a good, solid formula of how you calculate ROI. What else is it called? The cap rate. Okay. Now, let's take the same house and now let's do a seller finance transaction. So this says the property sells for $127,500, $20,000 down, $107,500 would be the amount that is carried with owner financing. So once again, this is how you calculate the yield on buying a discounted note. Now, people ask me, do you have to buy a note at a discount? And the answer is no, you absolutely don't have to buy a note at a discount. But the answer is you can buy a note at a discount. How often does that happen? Well, quite honestly, I've bought over 50,000 notes at a discount. So I would say we've made it a standard. We've proven it to be a market. But once again, you may buy a note where you don't have to buy it at a discount. Now, the terms on this seller finance note are $107,000, 5% interest, $709 per month. So see, the net income on this is slightly lower than the $750 net income. So this means that the buyer that you sold, you have a note on the property. The buyer is now paying his own maintenance on the property. He's paying his own taxes. He's paying his own insurance. You're the bank. You're not the landlord, right? You're not responsible for it. They don't call you if the water heater goes out. They don't call you if if the plumbing needs fixing or whatever the case may be. So this income number, I use two different analogies. So first of all, the payment is $709, 20 years, 5% interest, which if you take any of those three variables, you can take this calculator and get the fourth, and it says that you're financing $107,500. Now, what if we buy the note at a discount? What if we want a higher yield than the note rate? What if I want to buy this note and I say, Eddie, I don't want to earn 5%, I want to earn 7%. What do I do? Well, I've got that payment for that term, right? I want that yield, I want 7% yield, and then what happens is I'm going to pay less than the full amount of the note. I'm going to buy the note at a what? I'm going to buy the note at a discount. So that discounted price for the note gives me a yield over 20 years of 7%. So the ROI method would not be an accurate calculation because why? Because it exceeds a 12-month period. If I had a 12-month note and a 12-month rental property ROI, I could arrive at very close to the same number. But when that ROI is calculated on a per year basis, it won't work if you're calculating it out over 20 years. It won't give you the same ratios or formulas. That's why it's not the proper tool to calculate. So from that number, then I have an income per year on this note, right? That is my 709 for the life of the note. Every year, and this is over 20 years, right? That's my timeline. And so if I bought a note for $91,000 over 20 years, it could return me back literally $170,000. Now, there's advantages to rentals versus notes. This is not really a debate of all of the advantages. I'm more oriented to be a note guy because when I have a note that owes me $709 a month, I got $709 a month. I don't pay the expenses on the property. The guy that owes the money pays the expense on the property. I'm just the bank. And so I like that. It's a more scalable way to do the business. I'm not saying there's not people that don't do well with rental properties. I will say to you that notes tend to be way more passive than people that own a rental. Okay, so that's what the process looks like, and this is the difference in how you calculate it. As I said earlier in the presentation, I discovered this is probably one of the most common questions that people that have formed, a lot of people that buy notes transition from a landlord, sometimes a burnout landlord. They've transitioned from a landlord to wanting to be the bank. And so once again, they're very accustomed to, this is how you calculate the income on a rental property. So they try to take a rental property formula and play that over the top of a note transaction. And so we've really addressed this because it is such a common question and something that we see on a regular basis. So let's kind of go over the summary again. We have a sales price of $127,500. We have a cash down payment of $20,000. We have a seller finance note. In other words, the seller financed the sale of the property for $107,500. Now, remember this, we bought the note at a discount. Why did we buy the note at a discount? Because the interest rate on the note was 5%. I made a determination. I wanted to earn a little higher interest on my investment than the interest rate on the note. So once again, if I wanted to earn 7%, remember the interest rate on the note was 5%. I can't change the payment. I can't change the term. So what can I change? I can change what I pay for the note. So I pay this price for the note, when remember, this was the amount of the seller finance note. So this was the amount of the loan, and I invested less than the full amount of the loan. So as you can see there, in order to do that, the yield that I'm buying a discounted note at would determine that my price for the loan would be slightly less. So once again, this gives you a good solid kind of clarity of what is it that an investor does that he is earning a yield on a note and a ROI on a rental. So that's a pretty basic idea, but it is one of the most common questions we've seen landlords ask us in over almost 20 years, and literally thousands of people have asked us this question. So it's sort of something that we felt like we really needed to address, and I hope this is some clarity for you. So this is the price on the note. This is the yield. This is the payment. And this is the term. So if I'm going to buy a note, I can't change the terms of the note. I can only change what I pay for the note. If I buy the note at a discount, I know that essentially the interest on my investment is going to exceed the interest paid on the note itself. And by the way, about a third of the notes we price are written at 3% interest or less. So we have to buy notes at a discount, or otherwise we wouldn't be earning very much interest on our money. You have to legally buy a note at a discount. Sometimes you would buy the note. You could even buy the note and pay, earn a yield that's even lower than the note rate. Now there's some strategies and a more advanced strategy in how you can do that and still do it safely. So I hope this is helpful. See you later.